Ah, yes, the beauty of civilization. Nothing says America more than a skyline of obscenely tall buildings interrupted by busy roads and highways that run right next to your bedroom window. How's it going, guys? Today I'll be working together with Paradox Interactive to show you the USA Northeast Region Pack, the latest regional content creator pack for City Skylines 2, which is available on Paradox Mods for free. We'll be taking a look at all the assets this pack brings and see how they compare with the assets of other packs. I will also provide some layout tips and basic grid sizes that I found work best for these new assets in order to create a typical American metropole. The United States Northeast Pack, or USNE Pack for short, is one half of a bigger regional pack based on the United States of America, with the other half being the United States Southwest Pack, which is a completely separate pack. In this video, I'm focusing on the USNE pack, which is based on the real northeast megalopolis of the United States, composed of the cities of this area, with the major ones being Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. Just like every other content creator pack, the majority of the assets that this pack gives are zone buildings. They compose the majority of the assets in the pack, and they are the ones who are going to end up defining the theme of your city, as they are the buildings that you're going to see the most often. One thing to note about zone buildings in the most recent content creator packs is that the buildings have unique color meshes for every level. So for example, if I pick an individual asset from a specific level and place it several times, you can see that there's different possible color combinations. Keep this in mind, as the catalog I'm about to show you for zone buildings, which consist on one building per level per building family, may not represent the full extent for variety, but it will give you a very complete idea of what this pack actually has to offer. I'll also be analyzing the assets based on their size, particularly their depth, or how far away they stretch from the road they are built on. I'll refer to these as blocks, tiles, or squares throughout the next section. For example, an asset that stretches 2 blocks from the road it's zoned in is a 2-block long building or a 2-tile deep building, independent of how large the asset is, just so you don't get confused as to what I'm referring to. Starting off with residential, the lowest density option that this pack gives starts at medium density row housing. So no low density options here, which is understandable given the fact that this pack is inspired in a region that is characterized by its tall and compact buildings. Row housing offers assets for 3 different sizes for length, consisting of 2 building groups which are 2 blocks deep, 5 building groups which are 3 blocks deep, and 4 building groups which are 4 blocks deep. This is a total of 11 different building families for a total of 55 completely distinct assets. But of course, the differences between buildings within the same building family are usually very minimal, consisting on the addition of an extra chimney or a billboard or a different color or shade. Just like every other row housing building, these are all 1 block wide, so they're very easy to zone and very convenient to fill gaps in your layout. It also has some variety with a lot of different styles and sizes, which I believe it's both a curse and a blessing. It's beneficial because it provides you options, but at the same time you get buildings that don't quite match with one another. So for example, this building family over here, which are these medium-sized apartment complexes, which I suppose you could see in an old midtown, have nothing to do with these buildings of the same length, which seem to accommodate a much lower number of families, and it's something that you would probably see on the countryside. We have the same thing happening over here in the 3-block deep section, with these grey brick-walled tall buildings, contrasting with these small homes to the side, which on their own have nothing to do with the next product family, which are these orange ones. If you're plopping your zone buildings with the help of mods, this is not going to be a problem, as you have better control over which building that you place. But if you are zoning the normal way, and if you draw a long strip of mid-density row housing, expect a lot of buildings that do not match with one another of different styles and shapes to spawn next to each other. Medium density residential provides zoning options for 4 different sizes in length, from 2 blocks deep all the way to 5 blocks deep, for a total of 9 different building families. The 4 block deep level has a range of both thin and wide assets, so this collection will be enough to cover most layouts with sufficient variety. Just like in the row housing section, there's different styles that contrast with each other, from beautiful old buildings reminiscent of the iconic apartment style of this region of the United States to more modern looking housing complexes. One thing I don't like, however, is that these buildings were made to be zoned side by side, and the walls don't align properly in some buildings within the same family, causing the walls of shorter low-level buildings to clip a portion of the windows of the taller, higher-level buildings. But this is just me nitpicking. I suppose the average player won't be bothered by this level of detail. The assets themselves are super nice looking and detailed, as we usually get in these specs. Mixed housing has zoning options for 3 different levels of depth, namely 2, 3 and 4 blocks long. With options for corner buildings, this section has the highest number of individual unique assets, especially on the 4 long block range. With a mix of old red brick buildings and more modern looking and colorful assets, this range offers plenty of variety. Some assets have this eco vibe going on with grassy rooftops, which is a representation of the green movement we've been seeing in the past decades. Although, just like I've mentioned in the previous sections, the mix of different styles may prove hard to get some consistency if you're zoning instead of plopping. The 4 long block range in particular has several wide assets which can take a lot of space. These assets blend and mix very well with the assets on the medium density residential on the previous section, so you might want to consider mixing these two zones together. Moving on to the last residential option, high density residential provides options for 5 different levels of depth, 2, 3, 4 and 5 blocks long. This is, in my opinion, and together with the office buildings as we'll see later on, the most successful collection of assets. Unlike other residential options, high density doesn't come with all these different styles and sizes of buildings. Sometimes less is more, and in this case, variety is achieved through changes in design and style, but not in the theme. Sure, you don't get all these different options, but looking at all the assets here, all of them look like they're part of the same family, and they all mix very well with each other, except for perhaps that dark and short building family in the 4 block long range, which looks like the black sheep of the group, and in my opinion doesn't fit very well. But unlike what we've seen on the medium density residential, the high density buildings of different high levels align perfectly with one another, and you don't get those clipped windows we've seen. The places where the shorter building is in contact with the taller building covers the window completely, making a seamless connection. This attention to detail is quite impressive. Now, moving on to commercial. This pack only comes with low density options. At first I was a bit surprised to not have some tall commercial buildings in a North American pack, but then I reached a conclusion that the majority of shops you have in these cities are ground floor shops with apartments on top, which are covered in the mixed residential section, so I suppose this makes sense. The low density commercial comes with options for 2, 3 and 4 block long layouts for a total of 7 different building families. The collection consists of mostly old looking non-assuming buildings. Changes in different levels within the same family consist mostly of the addition of vents and water reservoirs on the roof or a canopy at the building entrance or a billboard somewhere. I suppose these assets are reminiscent of the types of stores in this region of the country, but I don't think they add a lot more to the assets the game already has. Besides the store whose facade looks like a castle or the market with the blue rusty roof, everything else is kinda forgettable. You probably won't even notice the difference between these and regular commercial buildings if you look at them from far away. But, nevertheless, what we really care about in this pack is the high-density office buildings. I mean, that's the point of making an American Northeastern-inspired pack in the first place. and these do not disappoint the slightest. Offering zoning options for 3 different layout sizes of 2, 4, and 6 blocks deep, this collection has a total of 12 different building families, providing ample variety. Just like in the high-density residential, I feel like most buildings pair very well with each other. Despite having a mix of old and modern buildings, there's no drastic changes in design or theme, and it doesn't feel awkward to see a modern white building right next to an old iconic red brick building. Oh, but what's this? A window clip in the same building family? After all the good things I've said? Shame. Just joking, the buildings themselves are also super detailed with different interesting styles. The red brick, contrasting with the white details on the old buildings, make them pop in your eyes even from far away, which is very well done. Also, one of the building families, in the longest slot, is one of the tallest zone buildings in the game when fully upgraded to level 5, surpassed only by a couple of zone office assets from the China pack, which I think it's fair. With all of this said, what would be the best road layout for Northeastern American city? Well, that would depend on what you need and what you want to do. If you want a universal layout that allows you to zone all building types with no hassle or thinking, perhaps the best option would be to go for an 8-block wide grid. This is because all building groups between residential, commercial and office come with a vast number of options for plots that are 4 blocks in length. An 8-block wide grid allows you to zone level 4 buildings of all categories on both sides of the road, thus maximizing zoning space. Of course, you will want tall skyscrapers, which you can only get by zoning 6x6 office plots. You could zone the occasional tall office in this layout, with the adjacent tiles being filled by random 2-block deep buildings, which all zoning categories of this pack also provide, by the way, or you can use this space to isolate your new office with a row of trees, a pathway or a park. When planning a dedicated high-density office area, you might want to get something a bit bigger, like a fully sized 12-block grid to build full-sized office buildings on both sides. By using this specific combination of medium roads and large roads, you can blend this big office layout with your smaller 8-block grid residential layout perpendicularly. This is essentially what I've done in my sample city for this pack, where I used a shorter 8-block grid to shape the residential and shorter skyline, and a larger grid for my taller office area on the riverside. Sure, there are changes in direction and road orientation that make it a bit more complex, but it's essentially the same logic. When it comes to building variety and diversity, it will depend on what you want, but you'll probably want to mix different building types together for diversity. Despite the variety of options on assets, the game tends to prefer spawning larger assets whenever possible, even there's enough demand and space. So in the end it will limit your final result to the same buildings. You can fight this by combining different zones together with one another. As I've said before, mixed zoning fits well with medium density, but you might also want to consider adding the occasional tall apartment with some high density residential, or a tall office to break the skyline. In addition, row housing can decrease your height in some places to make the skyline look a bit more interesting. For my office area, I combined the tall offices with high density residential. These buildings look very similar and blend very well together. Another thing I've done through the city was zoning some high density base commercial buildings, the ones that come with the base game. This will provide your office and busy areas with enough businesses and hotels. Let's talk about unique buildings. This pack comes with 2 residential unique buildings, 2 commercial buildings, and 1 office building. This last one is surprisingly shocking and disappointing, isn't it? You would expect the pack based on such a high-rise metropolitan area to come with a bunch of options for tall office buildings, especially as there's certainly no lack of options. I mean, just take a look at the skyline of New York City. The China pack alone came with 5 different office signature buildings. Well, anyway. Starting off with the residential options, first we have this building, the Frankfurt Mansard building, and I'm sure I just butchered this. This is a 4x4 residential corner building with a distinguishable clock tower. It will most likely stand out in your residential area. However, the style of this building seems to be identical to the style of a zone office building of the same plot size, as it has the same white contrast between the bright red and white tones. So you could pair these together to add housing options to your office area, especially because the signature building provides room for 192 households. It is also the only residential signature building in the entire game that provides city attractiveness, with a whopping 5% increase citywide, making it a super useful building to have in a NE-inspired city. What's not so useful is the other residential signature building, the Atkin Palmer Mansion, a 4x4 individual asset. I'll be honest, despite looking great, it doesn't really fit with anything else that comes with this spec. It could potentially stand out in its own dedicated plot, but with so many options for mansions and large luxury homes as signature buildings already, there's not really a lot of reasons to use this building unless you like its visuals a lot. I'm sure this building is inspired by some real existing structure in this region of the United States that justifies its presence in this spec, which I'm sure someone's gonna let me know angrily in the comments section. Oh my god, how do you not know this super famous building, blah 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 blah. Whatever. I just wish they at the very least had given this building some more meaningful buffs, but that's not the case, and there's only the basic well-being boost, further strengthening my argument. Moving on to commercial buildings, we have the Northeastern Inn, which is yet another 4x4 asset. I feel this building would fit very well next to most buildings in this pack, but its color and style is very similar to some of the assets in the mixed zoning collection, so you might want to pair them this way. Where this asset shines is in its buffs. I mean, just look at this, it's eye-watering. With 3 citywide buffs, this building would be a valuable addition to any city. Worth noting, this is the only signature building in the game that offers a buff in park entertainment, which is very curious. The other commercial signature building in this pack has a name I won't dare to pronounce. This one only offers a 1% buff in city attractiveness and a +5 boost in well-being, a stark contrast with the previous building. It's hard to understand why some of these signature buildings are so overpowered when it comes to buffs, and others are so lackluster. However, functionality aside, this building is stunning, with a very unique style and color palette. The emerald green roof in particular is beautiful. However, the fact that it doesn't match with anything else in this pack can make it a bit hard to find an adequate spot for it. Finally, jumping to the only office building of this pack, which is called the Imperial State Building. I don't think I need to mention which building this asset is inspired on. This is a super tall building that makes a striking statement in your city skyline. Being 12 blocks in width and 6 blocks in depth, it fits perfectly in your office layout in the same grid as your 6x6 zone office buildings. If my experimentation is correct, the Imperial State Building is currently the 4th tallest building in the entire game, including region packs. Because there's not a lot of similar options in height, the Imperial State Building is always going to stand out in your city, achieving a blended look just like the skyline of New York City, where the Empire State Building is almost concealed among the other taller buildings, is probably not going to be possible with only American assets, and you'd probably want to get the China pack as well, as this has a lot more options for tall buildings. Other than that, the building itself is beautiful and imposing. Its buffs are pretty standard though. Alright, let's talk about service buildings. As with all region packs, the USNE comes with several of them. First, we have a new water tower, which seems to be based in this one, located in Virginia. With an output of 40,000 cubic meters of water and a base upkeep of 16,000, it has a base cost of 0.4 per cubic meter, making it the most cost-efficient water tower in the entire game. Of course, if you compare it with the pumping stations and other more adequate water sources, this figure falls short. However, where this asset truly shines is not in its water output, but its upgrades, as they provide city attractiveness. You can upgrade the North American water tower with 3 different visual stickers or paintings, and 2 of them provide a 1% boost each in city-wide attractiveness. This is huge, especially because unlike signature buildings or landmarks, which you may only place once, you can build unlimited water towers. For example, 10 fully upgraded of these water towers result in an overall attractiveness boost of 20% for your entire city, making this the perfect asset to cheese your way into the max city attractiveness level at a relatively low cost, especially because you can export the excess water you produce if you have a pipeline outside connection. For healthcare, we have both the medical clinic and a fully sized hospital. The medical clinic is a 10x6 asset which can be upgraded with extension wings on the sides to increase patient capacity and to add some bulk to its shape. Ambulances are parked in the front, so you can see them coming and going often. I love this feature on this type of buildings as it adds some life to them. Let's take a look at some efficiency numbers. With a base area of 60 tiles and a capacity for 230 patients, the standard medical clinic has a capacity of 3.8 patients per tile. Upgraded with the extension wings, and this number increases to 5.8 patients per tile, making it one of the most efficient buildings to accommodate as many sick people in the least amount of space. This new American asset is only surpassed by the French Medical Center, which, by being a small asset with an area of only 20 tiles and housing 150 patients, has an efficiency rate of 7.5 patients per tile. Using the same logic, the USNE Medical Clinic has a capacity of 0.1 ambulances per tile, which is in the normal range when compared with other clinics. The full-size hospital is this massive 14 by 14 tile structure. Its size makes it difficult to fit in your standard grid, so you'll have to make modifications to your layout or build it in its own dedicated plot, like what I've done in my city. It starts as this structure, but its appearance changes significantly when you upgrade it with the trauma center and the treatment ward. Additionally, you can add a helipad in the back. When fully upgraded, the hospital has this asymmetric shape which I really like. I think this is one of the most good-looking hospitals in the game. Again, the NE hospital is one of the most efficient when it comes to patient capacity, housing 4.3 patients per tile when fully upgraded. It's lower than the upgraded French and Japanese hospitals though, with the upside of having a helipad while the other two do not. Ambulance capacity falls short at 0.1 ambulances per tile, lower than most other hospitals. If your city is constantly having sick people in needed transport, you might need to complement this hospital with smaller, more efficient clinics. For education, we are given 2 different schools. The elementary school is this U-shaped 10x7 block asset. Because it's 7 blocks deep, it can be fitted perfectly in my suggested 8 block grid layout, as the 1 block gap is filled by the building's pavement, which snaps to the road on the opposite side automatically. It can be upgraded with an extra floor for more student capacity, which makes it slightly taller. An upgraded school has a capacity of 21.4 students per tile, which is average. If you want to pack as many students as possible in just one place, however, you are probably better off by placing the City Elementary School, which has almost 3 times the capacity when fully upgraded. Its style is also not very different from the assets in this pack, so it doesn't look very out of place visually. The high school is a significantly larger asset, 18 blocks wide and 14 blocks deep. It has a large parking lot in the front and leisure student options in the back, such as a basketball and tennis courts, as well as some tables. It can be upgraded with an extension wing for more student capacity. Speaking of which, efficiency for this school is lackluster. It's not the worst, but certainly not the best for an urban school in a big metropole. An upgraded USNE high school houses 1300 students with a capacity of 5.2 students per tile. Compare this figure with the 37.5 of the upgraded French high school and you'll understand exactly what I'm referring to. As you know, student capacity is demanding, and getting the sufficient amount of student capacity in City Skylines 2 is still relatively tough. So if you're building an American-style town, you're probably better off by placing the standard city high school, which, just like we've seen in an elementary school, fits nicely into the theme while having 3 times the student capacity efficiency. Fire and rescue is a peculiar situation, especially for the smaller sized assets. This pack brings a tiny 1x4 firehouse with a single fire truck which cannot be upgraded. This is inspired by the real Hook and Ladder Company 8 firehouse in Manhattan, which was also the stage where the 1984 Ghostbusters film was set, so it will probably look familiar to you. And look at how cute this thing is. Comparing it to other fire stations, we can see this is not the most impressive firehouse, with 0.3 trucks per tile and the second highest base cost per truck. The description of this asset says it has a very small footprint to add fire protection to dense neighborhoods. And you know what? That makes sense actually, because fires are so sporadic in city skylines too, and you'll probably never need to have 10 trucks deployed at once. Instead of having a big fire station in a central location with a huge supply of fire trucks serving an entire region, perhaps it makes more sense to have smaller, cheaper stations spread over different areas so that trucks can get to fires faster. This is particularly important in dense cities with big traffic congestions where trucks take a long time to get to their destination. Also, the small footprint of this asset makes it a very convenient building to cover awkward gaps in a city's layout. As for the larger fire station, it is a relatively small 6x5 asset with a single possible upgrade for a helipad. It follows the iconic look with red brick walls that's present throughout the entire pack, allowing it to blend very well. Unlike the smaller station, it's also one of the stations with the most fire trucks per tile, at a ratio of 0.3 and a total of 8 fire trucks, and of course, a helicopter. Finally, the police department is complemented with 2 additional stations. The smaller one is a 3x5 asset which can be upgraded with extra jail cells for more prisoner capacity, because America. It also provides an additional patrol car to the base 5. These cars are parked outside, similar to what we've seen in the medical clinic and hospital. Its figures are very standard on both cost per patrol car and patrol cars per tile. The larger police headquarters building is an 8x7 medium-sized asset. Because it's 8 blocks wide, it fits perfectly in my suggested 8-block grid. It can be upgraded once with an helipad, just like the large fire station. Cars are parked in the front and outside of the building, just like the smaller police station. And, just like the smaller police station, it has a standard number of patrol cars per tile. However, it also has the highest base cost per patrol car, so it's an expensive station to keep. Before I give you my final evaluation of this pack, let me tell you a bit about this city. This is an American-inspired city that I've built specifically for this region pack. I started the development in this particular coastal area of the river, but there's still a lot of room to expand to. Unfortunately, I have no time to continue it. Would you like to continue the development of this city? If you want to play this city, head over to the pinned comment of this video where I'll tell you how you can download it. Now, as for my final thoughts of the US NE pack, I think the objective of these region packs is to bring a feeling of the real cities and regions they are based on into city skylines, for players to be able to replicate certain iconic sceneries or even reimagine them. I think this pack, just like the previous packs, does that very adequately. I can see some problems with it though. Considering this is a sponsored video by Paradox itself, I'm obligated to only say good things. Nah, I'm just joking, I'll be honest and constructive. I've already talked about the lack of consistency in the signature building buffs, as well as the lack of options for office signature buildings, which, for this pack in particular, I feel like it's a wasted opportunity. It hit the mark by including some iconic structures like the Empire State Building, the Water Tower and the famous Ghostbusters fire station, and certainly some more obvious references that I failed to recognize, but I think it could have done more. I understand that modeling assets can be very time consuming, but I also feel that this is a matter of prioritization. Instead of having so much variety in the mixed residential zoning, for example, I think I would have preferred a couple more office signature buildings. I also feel that for these regional packs, we're being given more variations of buildings we already have plenty of in the game and none of what we're actually missing. Instead of having yet another school, clinic or police station, which literally comes in every single one of these packs, I would have preferred something more unique that the game actually lacks, like an overground elevated subway station, for example. Not only do we have just the ones from the base game, but especially because this pack is inspired in a region with a lot of these that can be used as inspiration. Maybe even roads of different styles or sizes. I like for these packs to be a bit more risk-taking and deliver something different and more unique, instead of consistently sticking with the same recipe and asset list pack after pack. Considering that each of these regional packs is several gigabytes in size, I can see the average player being more conscious of downloading these if what they're gonna get are basically reskins of what they already have. Nevertheless, the US NE pack is a very solid addition to the existing collection of regional packs, giving us players more options to customize and style our cities. With a solid array of assets as on buildings, you can very easily replicate the style of some of the most recognizable American cities, which is something that I'm sure a lot of players were looking for. I hope you have enjoyed this video. It took me a significant amount of time to make, so if you did, don't forget to leave a comment or a like below. Did I leave out anything important? Let me know in the comment section. Also, let me know what's your thoughts on this regional pack. Did it meet your expectations? Thank you so much for watching and I will see you on the next video. Until then, take care.